Welcome to The Explainer. If you're a leader who's trying to ship products faster without, everything catching on fire, this is for you. We're going to talk about infrastructure as code, but not as some techie buzzword, but as your secret weapon for speed and stability. Let's jump in.
Okay, that's a pretty bold statement to kick things off, right? But honestly, in today's cloud-first world, it's the truth. We're about to unpack why treating your infrastructure like it's just a pile of hardware instead of a critical piece of software is probably one of the biggest hidden risks in your entire organization.
So, to really get why infrastructure as code, or IaC, is such a game changer, we first have to talk about the pain it solves. And believe me, these are problems every single one of us in leadership has felt. The old manual way of doing things isn't just a little slow, it's a genuine strategic liability. Just look at this timeline. Does this feel painfully familiar? It should. A team spends a month handcrafting scripts for AWS. Then, a few months later, maybe Azure has a better price. 6 months after that, GCP comes knocking. As a leader, you have to see the real problem here. It isn't the scripts themselves, it's the entire strategy. Every time you switch clouds, you are literally burning months of your team's time and focus, time they should be spending on your product, not the plumbing. That's a direct hit to your agility. And all that manual work leads to this really nasty problem called configuration drift. You can think of it as the silent killer of consistency. It's all those tiny, undocumented changes that pile up over time. And before you know it, your dev, your staging, and your production environments are all unique little snowflakes. This drift, this is exactly why you have those 4-alarm fires when someone says, "But it worked on my machine." It pulls your best people into late-night war rooms instead of building value. So let's just lay it all out. The old way isn't just inefficient, it's actively creating business risk. It makes you slow, it introduces human error, it makes security audits a total nightmare, and maybe worst of all, it creates this constant blame game between your dev and your ops teams. Every single one of these things is a direct drain on your bottom line. Okay, so if that's the broken model, what's the better way? Well, this brings us to a whole new way of thinking. Infrastructure as code. The idea here is actually pretty simple, but it is incredibly powerful. You manage your infrastructure with the exact same discipline, the same tools, and the same rigor that you use for your most important application code. At its heart, IaC just means you're defining your entire IT world, your servers, your load balancers, your databases, all of it, inside configuration files. You're getting out of the business of clicking around in a web console and into a world where everything is version controlled and automated. And that shift in mindset, that's everything. Your infrastructure stops being this fragile thing that people are afraid to touch. It becomes a product of real engineering. It has versions, it has automated tests, it has a clear, repeatable process. It becomes a true asset, not a liability you're constantly fighting. Putting it side by side like this makes it so clear. The contrast is just night and day. On the left, you've got manual, risky, reactive work. And on the right, with IaC, you get a properly engineered system. You're swapping out brittle, one-off scripts for a single source of truth in Git. You're killing configuration drift. You're basically trading chaos for predictability and risk for speed. Okay, this is the part that really matters to you as a leader. Forget the tech for a second. Let's translate all of this into the actual business outcomes that you're measured on, like budget, speed, and risk. Let's start with speed. A 70% reduction in deployment time. I mean, that's not a typo. Just think about that. That's the difference between your product team waiting weeks for a new test environment versus getting one in minutes. That's a massive acceleration of your entire innovation cycle. But the business case here is so much bigger than just speed. You get a huge boost in reliability because you're stamping out that configuration drift. You save real money because you're automating away manual work, and you can easily tear down environments you're not using. Your security audits, they become almost trivial when every single change is logged in version control. And your disaster recovery plan, it goes from being a 3-inch binder collecting dust on a shelf to a script that can rebuild your entire business from scratch. Strategically, this is all about focus. This is a really clever way to think about it. By defining your infrastructure in code, you let your cloud provider and the IaC tools do all the complex, heavy lifting. This means the amount of custom, complex code your team has to write and maintain gets way smaller. You're freeing them up from troubleshooting plumbing so they can focus on building the features that actually drive your business. Now, as a leader, you don't need to be in the weeds writing this code yourself, but there are 2 big ideas you really need to understand to guide your teams and make the right strategic calls. So the first big idea is the approach. Think of it like this. The old way, the imperative way, is like giving your team a detailed step-by-step recipe for how to bake a cake. But the modern way, the declarative way, is much simpler. You just tell this system what you want. I want a chocolate cake. The system itself is smart enough to figure out how to make it happen. And that second approach is just so much more powerful. So why does that matter to you? Well, because a declarative system is basically self-healing. It's like a GPS. You just give it an address, you don't give it turn-by-turn directions. If there's a traffic jam or wrong turn, it just recalculates the route to get you back to your destination. It constantly corrects for drift or manual mistakes. For the business, that means more uptime, fewer frantic phone calls, and a much more resilient platform. All right, the second key concept is all about how you organize your teams to get the best of both worlds, speed and stability. The most successful model we see is splitting your infrastructure into two layers. You have a central platform team that owns the foundation, the core networking, the security, the compliance. That gives you stability. But then you empower your individual product teams to manage the infrastructure that's specific to their own applications. That gives them the speed and the autonomy they need to innovate fast. So what's your job in all of this? What's your specific role in making this big shift happen? I'll tell you right now, it's about a lot more than just signing a check for a new tool. Your most important job here is to understand that this is a cultural transformation. This isn't just a tech change. You are fundamentally shifting your organization from a reactive, ticket-based model to a collaborative, engineering-first culture. And your job is to lead that change from the front. So how do you actually do that? First, you have to be the one who champions collaboration. You have to break down those old walls between dev and ops. Second, you have to be firm. No more manual changes to production. Git is the single source of truth, period. Third, you change what you measure. You stop focusing on tickets closed and start measuring things like deployment speed and system reliability. And finally, and maybe most importantly, you have to empower your teams. Trust them to manage their own resources within the safe guardrails that your platform team has built. Ultimately, IaC lets you completely reframe the purpose of infrastructure in your company. It stops being a cost center, it stops being a source of tickets and frustration, it becomes a strategic asset that helps you win. So the last question I'll leave you with is this. Be honest with yourself. Right now, is your infrastructure a bottleneck holding you back? Or is it an accelerator pushing your business forward? Because with this approach, you really do get to choose.
If you like this video, then like, subscribe, and share with your near and dear people P10. Let's grow smarter together.